Episode 136, PR Essential Summit, SEO your website by the new year. What are the metrics that matter?
Welcome to the PR Playbook Podcast, the only podcast giving you actionable skills and advice you need to execute a strategic PR program. Warning: what you hear next may lead to brand awareness and increased sales and customer exposure. Now here's your host, Rinjini Joshua.
Hi there. Again, we have a awesome PR Essentials Summit session, and this really talks and dives into more SEO, which is something that you should really be exploring a couple times a year to make sure that you are on track. I think a lot of people don't integrate SEO into their PR programming. And so when you're writing press releases or marketing documents or your blog or even speaking in interviews, making sure that you have those like keywords and sound bites is really important. So in this discussion for the PR Essential Summit, we talk about really how to optimize SEO on your website, but also just kind of how to integrate it throughout your PR program. So I hope you guys enjoy.
Well, hello, everybody. Thank you guys for joining us. I am Megan.
And I'm Grady.
And we are going to talk, well, really Grady's going to talk. We're going to talk about SEO, all things SEO, and getting your website SEO ready for 2023. So before we jump in, Grady, I just want to give you a minute to introduce yourselves and kind of let everybody know who you are. I know who you are, and we've worked with Grady for a long time. He's a fantastic consultant and SEO expert. But brag on yourself a little bit, please.
Oh man. Yeah. So I've been in the SEO and content creation world for about 10 years. So I've seen all of the major changes and minor changes with the Google algorithms and the birth and death of some search engines. So it's been a whirlwind of a decade, but it's exciting. It's always changing. So it's definitely an industry that keeps you on your toes, but for some of us, like us SEO people, that's what makes us click.
I've always wondered, and I can't believe I've never asked this question, what got you interested in SEO in the first place?
I've always been sort of a self-proclaimed computer nerd.
Gotcha.
Even in middle school, I was taking the programming classes and continued that into high school and college. And it's something that I never really saw myself making a career out of it, but the way things work, I was like, hey, this is fun. It was kind of a hobby for years and years. And then I realized, okay, I've actually know my way around this world. I could do this for other people. So that's pretty much the story in a nutshell.
I like it. I like when something that is your hobby just kind of naturally gravitates to a career, because I think you enjoy it a whole lot more.
Yeah. Outside of the occasional imposter syndrome where it's like, wait a second, I started this as a hobby years ago. I shouldn't be here.
I think we all suffer from that at some point.
Oh yeah.
At some point. So I know that there's going to be a lot of questions, but before we jump into this, there's a lot of definitions of SEO, and you may be talking about this at some point in this presentation. I'm curious as to, just to clarify for anyone who's watching, what is SEO kind of in a nutshell?
SEO in a nutshell is search engine optimization. So it is how your website and your your online brand identity communicates with not only search engines like Google, but the overall user experience.
Gotcha. So let's jump in. I know you've got a lot of good information. You've prepared some slides for us. So let's jump in and talk about the metrics that matter and what people can do, like nuts and bolts, to get ready for 2023.
Cool. Yep. So as you mentioned, we're going to be discussing search engine optimization, or SEO, and a lot of the ways, or some of the ways, you can beat out your competitors in 2023 and reach that glorious top spot in Google search engine results page. And I'll go ahead and skip the introduction since we've already done that. The agenda of the things I would like to discuss are, number one, why SEO is important. There's always these questions of, is SEO dead now? Is AI taking over SEO? And we'll get into those later. Next is going to be the current and future trends of SEO, the largest SEO hurdles and challenges that brands face. And we'll also discuss some of the priority tasks for a brand's SEO and a few ways that you can determine if your SEO efforts are paying off. And then, as you mentioned, we'll open the floor for any questions. So ready to get started? So why is SEO important? Now let's take a look at this. If you consider one of the few similarities between just a small brand that has just recently launched and a Fortune 500 company is that SEO is the paramount tool when it comes to reaching new customers. Without SEO, your brand relies on customers actually remembering and then manually typing in a URL into their browser to visit your website. On the other hand, if your site has a solid, or your brand has a solid SEO strategy, you're almost guaranteed improved organic traffic, or in other words, visitors who find your website through a search engine instead of that manually typing in and remembering the URL. Additionally, your quality SEO strategy will also ensure that your visitors are falling into your brand specific target demographic. So, no random visits, or at least a reduction of random visits to the site that are just, wasting everyone's time.
Yep.
Along with this
comes improved branding and credibility.
and when I say along with this, I mean SEO. Consider this. So if you're looking for a place to have dinner in a town that you're visiting for the first time, and you've narrowed it down to two choices, which are you more likely to choose? A restaurant that has a 5-star Google review and that appears on the first page of a search engine results, or this restaurant that, you may have heard about through the grapevine, but they don't have a Google presence. Maybe you found their website and it's slow, it's outdated, it doesn't work on your cell phone. I think most of us will probably go to the one that has that Google presence, that credibility, if you will, which we will get into later. Just a little example of, how SEO affects everyone. And along these lines, the best SEO practices will also improve that user experience. Like I said, is your website outdated? Is it mobile optimized? Is it slow? How's that performance? Because that's going to determine how long a person spends, or the amount of time a person spends on your website. And ultimately, all of these packaged together will mean an improvement of your marketing budget ROI. You establish that credibility and the trust and the authority in your area, and it will pay off.
I
So
remember.
yep.
Go ahead. I was going to say, I'm going to show my age here when you talk about ROI on marketing dollars. I can remember my very first job out of college. I was actually working for the small private college that I had gone to school there. And I was working in the admissions department. And I remember our boss at the time, this was before SEO was really a thing. This was like Web 2.0 was just coming out. We were all still like talking on AOL Messenger. And my boss at the time was talking to us one day about essentially ROI on our marketing and advertising dollars. And he said something along the lines of, well, how much money do you think that Harvard spends on their marketing and advertising budget every year? And of course, we're throwing out insane numbers. And he said, actually, not a lot, because essentially at the time, he was like, everybody knows what Harvard is. They're just naturally in the news, well placed. The late 90s, early 2000s version of SEO essentially was what was happening for them. And he said, they don't have to spend a whole lot on marketing because their name is already organically out there. And so to me, even all these years later, that's kind of the example that I go back to is, how does that apply today? And you are absolutely right. When people can organically just find you online, and they find you not just in one place, but naturally in many places, people trust Google searches. Let's be honest.
Yep.
People trust Google reviews. So if you're there and you're showing up at the top and you're properly ranked, it is going to save you on your marketing budget, and you can put that into other things that are equally as important, but you're going to be able to stretch that dollar further.
Yep, exactly. And maybe I'm the outlier here, but even if I know a website's URL, let's say I'm going to Amazon, a lot of times it's faster for me to just Google that and click that first link.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. And I'm always looking at what's above or below that,
Yep.
that type it in differently. What's the ad showing up for?
Mhm.
And to be honest, you know this, we do this with a lot of our clients too. I type our clients' information into Google because I want to see where competitors are ranking above and below them, or what ads are popping up when I'm searching for that client on Google. So it's funny because Ranjini actually mentioned this in the last session. It's really important to Google yourself and your business every so often,
Yep.
to see where you're ranking and why. But there are also some SEO tools that you can use. So we'll jump into that in a little bit as well.
Cool. Yeah, so let's take a look at some of the current trends and then 2023 trends and SEO. It's a constant, constant world of change, as I mentioned, and the list I have put together is it's not an exhaustive list, but these are the areas that I found most of the industry experts have been discussing this year. Most of the chatter has been around. Most of the controversy has been around, and also ones that I've personally encountered with nearly all of my clients. So the first is long form content. Now, most of us hated writing essays in school, and you probably don't get too excited about them now either. But unfortunately, quality long form content still rules the roost in the world of SEO. I found a study by SERP that revealed that the average content length for sites that ranked in the first position in Google was nearly 2,500 words now, which I was even kind of surprised about
Yeah.
because, I was thinking, 18 to 2,000, it's jumped up to 2,500 words. So, getting that, the quality long form content, I think that the takeaway right there is quality. You can't just throw a bunch of garbled words on a page and expect it to rank just because you reach a certain word count. I think I see a lot of complaints. I hear a lot of complaints. I don't want to do a 2,500 word essay. And I always remind clients that customers expect you to be the expert, and most of the time they're coming to your website as a source of knowledge or information. So keep that in mind, and just remember, if they can't find the information that they're looking for from your website or from you, your competitor is probably more than happy to provide that information.
And I think it's a testament to, and this makes me happy because I was an English major. That was my degree. So I'm kind of happy to see long form content making a comeback. There were a few years there where it was all about, 250 words and fluff and stuff like that. But I also think it's a testament to the fact that people are tired of the fluff. When they're going online, they're searching intentionally. And we're moving from Web 2.0 to Web 3.0. There's a plethora of information and ways to interact out there, and people are searching for their communities, and they're searching for quality interactions and quality content. They know fluff writing when they see it. And I think that speaks to your point about, can you really use AI to write good SEO?
Oh, we get
Yeah.
into that.
But I mean, that's a rabbit trail. And I think this speaks to, you can, but do you really want to? And is that really what your community wants?
Right. No, you're exactly right. And too, this past August, Google cracked down on a lot of the fluff content pieces. And as you mentioned, a lot of that had to do with how many people are just churning content using AI, and it's not quality content. It's just regurgitated information that's rephrased. But yeah, we'll discuss AI content momentarily.
And by the way, we do
Uh,
have some questions coming in. Do you want me to ask them to you now, or we can hold them till the end?
yeah, I'm gonna slide at the end for questions. So one of the big things in 2022 in the world of SEO was utilizing the EAT or EAT framework, or EAT signals, as some people refer to them. And this stands for expertise, authority, and trust. So when you're developing that SEO strategy, it's just a good, solid tool to use the EAT litmus test, if you will, as a test to determine if you're delivering that appropriate content to users. And, if it's time, you should reach out to someone else, or, an industry expert, or even just look at, reconsider how you're going to market with your content. So in this graphic, you have the three questions that you can ask yourself. Under expertise, look at your content, look at your website, and say, how much experience and knowledge do you have? Or I guess if you're the writer, do I have on this topic? If you're not sure, you find that you're just having to research everything yourself, it might be time to look into contacting a content creator who's an actual authority or an expert in that area. Authority are influencers who serve that same audience, linking to your content. And we'll discuss backlinks a little later, but again, this is a way that Google uses to determine if others believe your content or you are the authority on a certain topic. And that's going to definitely boost those rankings. And then lastly is just trust. Are you protecting your user information? Are you providing accurate, unbiased, and ethical information? And, in the past couple of years, especially, Google has really cracked down on biased information. We'll discuss, AI generated content and just to regurgitation of information without any citations or actual factual information behind it. So the EAT framework was all the rage in 2022 for people who wanted to make sure that they were positioning themselves properly, in terms of SEO. Next, AI generated content. See, I promised. But as you can see, there's a catch. So AI, it's great for brainstorming. I've even seen it be used to create content outlines. But as I mentioned, around August of this past year, Google really cracked down with an algorithm change that really focused on a lot of the AI generated content that's just being used to churn content as quickly as possible. I like to tell clients, don't be afraid to try out some of the AI content tools out there. They're really neat ones, really powerful ones. I was playing around with one, Chat GTP recently, and it's so crazy, some of the things it can do. But would I trust it to provide me with unique, useful information, in long form content form? Nah, it's not going to happen. Not yet, at least. And so, just do not rely on AI to create all of your content. You're only going to hurt yourself by doing this, especially with the recent Google algorithm update.
And I think that speaks to, there's this whole side conversation, not related to SEO, but in general, tech and robotics, are they taking away our jobs? No, they're tools. And at the end of the day, AI generated content, same thing. It's a tool and it's meant to maybe make our jobs easier and make us work more meaningfully and a little bit faster. But sorry, the bot is not there yet to replace your AI generated content. So all that to say, don't let your content creators go, or don't think that, these new, and I've seen a lot of the software too coming up in the last 6 months. So I'm sure that's why Google cracked down on it. There was definitely a boom in that type of software, but you still need that human touch and that human set of eyes at the end of the day.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. Core principles. That's the next thing, is they are still a staple in SEO. And I personally don't think they'll ever be going away, at least not anytime soon. And core principles fall into the realm of technical SEO, which typically requires some coding background, or you at least need to be kind of comfortable navigating and making edits to your source code. You don't necessarily need to know how to code from ground up, but there needs to be an understanding of some of the fundamentals. So, in a nutshell, technical SEO is optimizing how well your website communicates with search engines and your website performance. And then routine site audits. That's another area that's really been streamlined by SEO and some AI tools. Even as recently as 5 years ago, an SEO audit would take days of just manually perusing each page of the website and looking through that source code and finding all the little bugs and issues. And it was just a headache for everyone involved, and a huge time sink. And these can now really be completed in a few minutes using tools like Ahrefs or SEMrush. And both of those have free versions. And those aren't the only ones. There are plenty. Google it. There are plenty of auditing tools out there. And audits are important because they provide you with information around areas of your website that you're beating out the competition, that you're excelling at, and also where you're lacking, where there may be some minor or really major issues, and give you a roadmap to correct those. So looking at 2023 trends, we've got site performance and responsive designs. So as user patience continues to decrease, as well as attention spans, things like page load times or websites that are not mobile responsive. So what that means is that just if you go to a website on your cell phone, it's still showing the website as in its desktop form, which usually you'll see like one letter because everything's so huge.
Yeah.
This is something, especially the responsive design. I forget the metric, but oh man, it's like 60 or 70% of traffic is from mobile users or mobile platforms now. So that's something that 2023 and even going forward, we're going to continue seeing search engines placing more emphasis and rewarding sites that are mobile responsive. And it seems like a sort of a given thing, but there are a lot of websites that, maybe they built the site 5-10 years ago that haven't implemented that element or that plugin to make it mobile responsive. So, if you're there, cool. If you've got a recent website build, chances are it's mobile responsive. If you've got an older website, you may want to look into it.
Gotcha.
And then also back to AI tools. There's still a catch. Don't worry. So a lot of people, they're asking, there's chatter around, could 2023 be the year that AI tools are taking over and producing actual, quality content? And personally, and I think the general consensus is that we're not going to see that for at least a few more years, but they are becoming more useful and more powerful in what they can provide. Like you said, they're a tool.
Yeah.
So things like AI generated meta descriptions or meta tags. I totally think, just having played around with ChatGPT for a few days, I think that by the end of 2023, we could absolutely be in a position where an AI tool could generate quality, meta descriptions, meta tags that you can't tell the difference between a human or AI. Kind of
And
scary,
having
but
had
kind of
to write
exciting.
those, yeah, go ahead. I was
What were you going to say?
having had to write those myself before, that's one thing. If a bot can write those, I'm very happy to turn that over to a
Oh
robot.
yeah.
I guess this is just the way that different people work, but I can write the long form content. My background is in writing, and so I enjoy that. But just when it comes to the descriptions and, like you said, the tagging, for some reason I get to the end of it and it's like my brain is a blur. And I'm like, I really do. I just want to put all this information in somewhere and something else spit out the tags for me. So that's a great tool. That's a great use of it in the future. So for one, I'm hoping that happens.
Yeah. And I don't think you're the only person that feels that way. I mean, I agree. I feel the same way as well. If you get finished with a piece of long form, it's like, oh, I completely forgot those meta tags. I got to go back now. And yeah, it's a pain, but even Google recognized several years ago that people just weren't doing meta tags or just really low quality meta tags and descriptions. So if you post a piece of content that Google crawls and they don't like your meta tag or you don't have one, they've even set up their algorithm to auto generate one. And it's not the best, but Google's just like, just get something up there. We don't want blank content on our search engine result pages. Video content. Is that what you see?
Yeah.
On
I
your
see.
screen? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So Google is prioritizing video content more than ever before. It includes, engaging and high quality content videos. So we're not talking stock video footage or something you pick up from Shutterstock or what have you. And, it not only engages users, but it's also going to help improve that time on the site metric. And we'll discuss that later. By having users stay on your website longer and watch those videos. And that's time on site is one of the metrics that Google looks for when determining rank status. So adding that unique video content, I think in 2023 is really going to take off. And then lastly is voice search optimization and natural language. And this kind of ties into, why AI generated content isn't working these days. But, tools like Siri, where you just, hey, Siri, Google this. Oh, I actually activated Siri on my phone. Crap.
I had not thought about that, but yeah, how many times do we ask Google or Siri to help us find some?
Right. Right. And so, Google's placing more emphasis on that, that because of that natural language. Because if you are naturally speaking and asking Siri to look something up or query something in Google, and you are comparing to a piece of AI generated content, which is still lacking that natural language aspect, then there could be a large disconnect, or usually is a large disconnect between what you're asking Siri to find and what Google actually returns. So, again, until AI, and it's getting there, but until they work on that natural language pattern, I think content creators are still safe for a few years.
Job security.
There you go. But yeah, overall, I think the 2023 SEO trends are probably going to be largely following the movement of the past, couple of years, and that's not a bad thing for brands because it sort of gives you more time to optimize that website and get things in order before any major rule changes or algorithm changes. And we all know how Google loves to just drop those last minute algorithm updates on us and leave us with a vague paragraph of here's what we changed, figure it out. So it's always easier to figure those things out when everything you're working with was in place and working properly prior to any changes.
Proactive.
So I think now let's look at some of the biggest SEO challenges that should be on your radar in 2023. Can't believe it's almost 2023.
I know. Just a couple weeks.
So the beauty of SEO is that anybody can learn how to do it. Anybody can do it, but some areas do tend to be a little more complex or complicated than others. And this list is a list I put together based on what my clients often consider to be more complicated topics. And usually the topics that are most frequently discussed when I'm contacted by a new client who's, a lot of times discovered they're in over their head with SEO. The first thing is just, again, creating useful and unique content. It's pretty self-explanatory, but remember, most of us don't enjoy writing essays, and that absolutely shows in the tone of the content. I'm sure you could look at some of my essays I wrote in college or high school, and you can just tell like I do not want to be writing this. So finding if you're not willing to do it, finding a content expert in your topic or your area or your industry who's passionate about it, I think that will really make a difference in the quality of content that you're putting out. And don't be afraid to reach out to content creators who specialize. I think a lot of times there's a misconception that SEO consultants or content creators, it's going to be I've got to sign a year-long contract, and hey, we enjoy this stuff. A lot of times, just pick up the phone, call us or email us, and we'll chat and give you all the information you need. And at that point, you can decide, hey, you know what, I want to work with this person, give them a shot, or go from there.
And like you said, it's finding someone in your industry. I think that's a step that sometimes people forget. There are a lot of great SEO writers out there. And one of the reasons we've enjoyed working with you also is because you're very upfront about this is my area of expertise and this is not my area of expertise. So you can have a friend or a family member or an acquaintance who's a great writer, but if they're not a great writer in the type of content that you need, it's just not going to be a good fit. It's still not going to create the content that you need. So don't be afraid to look for and try out several SEO content creators until you find the person who really gets you and your voice and the type of content that you need to stand out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, good point. There's definitely a trial and error aspect to it. You may get lucky and hit a home run on the first one, but most times you're going to go through a few before you find one that just captures that voice, that your brand, or that's capable of representing your brand like you want. So next thing is, or the next challenge is just staying up to date on the Google algorithm changes. In 2020, Google made 4,500 changes to their search algorithm just in that year alone. So I think that works out to be like 12 changes a day. Granted, the majority of these were really minor changes. So, just affecting or impacting very small niche industries. But it's still important to have somebody on your team who follows these changes, tracks them, and more importantly, understands the impact of these changes. Because when they do happen, like I said, it happens usually overnight, and you need to be able to pivot immediately if it's something that's going to affect you. Identifying target keywords. That's the one that everybody's like, oh yeah, I can do that. I got that. I got a list for you. It's a common misconception that you can just pull target keywords out of thin air. And that's, yeah, certainly not the case. If you're not comfortable using keyword research tools like Google's Keyword Planner, Ahrefs, SEMrush, it might be in your best interest to at least work with an SEO expert who can make sure you're not wasting your time trying to target and creating content around keywords that you may not ever, or you may have a 1% chance of ever even ranking for. Even if you feel like, oh, this keyword this is the perfect keyword. It describes me exactly like I want to be described, or my product like exactly as it should be. There, if it's a highly competitive keyword, I mean, you're barking up the wrong tree. You're wasting your time, and you would be better off in most cases identifying 3, maybe similar keywords or lower competition keywords that you would be able to rank for.
Yeah, something I learned from you this year was learning about being willing and able to adjust your target keywords so that you can find ones that you can rank for, but also understanding the difference between your target keywords and how people are actually searching for you. What they are now and what
Exactly.
they should be can be two different things. You might get into a little bit more of that later, but if he doesn't, that's a great topic to discuss. And Grady's definitely someone that you can reach out to and get more information about that, because it's not just about finding the perfect keyword. It's about understanding how people search for you.
Nope. Yeah, there's definitely a degree of, I guess, user psychology
Yeah.
that ties into SEO. So the next is your technical SEO. And we touched on that earlier, but this is just optimizing your website or how well your website communicates with search engines and just overall website performance. I find it's one of the most frequently requested services from clients, just because most people don't have a coding background or just aren't necessarily comfortable navigating that site's backend framework. And with the difference with technical SEO is it's, you go in, you clean up any messes, and then it's more of maybe a monthly maintenance type thing. Whereas on page or backlink building SEO, that's more of your day to day. You have to babysit it every single day
Okay.
to get where you want or get the results you want. The next is avoiding duplicate content. So this topic primarily affects e-commerce brands. I'm not sure if we have any e-commerce brands that are tuning in, but so duplicating content is a really easy mistake to make. But on the flip side, it's a golden opportunity to rank higher than your competitors because most everybody does it. To give you an example of what I'm talking about, let's say you have a product listed across multiple merchant websites, and best practices say that you should create a relatively unique product description for each of those platforms. When in reality, most brands just copy and paste that same product description across all of the merchants. And what happens is you begin competing against yourself within Google, because if you've got, Amazon, Walmart, Best Buy, and they all carry your product, and then those entities are competing for Google's number one spot. Because of your duplicate content, you're now self-cannibalizing the race to the top. So just switching up those descriptions a bit can make a world of difference.
In other words, don't be lazy.
Exactly. Yeah, there you go. That's a much more succinct yet equally effective way of phrasing that. Let's see. Video content. So again, video content is highly prioritized by Google, but it's having that content creator who's capable of creating that unique, engaging content. Again, no stock footage here. It can be tough to find, and sometimes expensive too. But when you find one that understands and can represent your brand's voice, they're worth their weight in gold. So hang on to them. Quality meta descriptions, your favorite. Yeah, again, anybody can create a meta description for a website or content, but are you sure that you're following the latest set of those SEO best practices? You know, like we also discussed, low quality meta descriptions and things of that nature can really make the difference between your site ranking on the first page or the 10th page. And honestly, how many times have you gone to the 10th page of Google and found the exact result that you're looking for? I don't even ever make it to the second page. So 10th page is out of the question.
I've occasionally made it to page 3, but that was mostly out
Oh,
of
wow.
curiosity. I was like, I just want to know what's on page 3 at this point.
I'm convinced after, page 3 or 4, those are just blank. Google doesn't even waste their time. And then lastly, sometimes clients just need that reassurance that they're doing all the right things and that they just require a little more patience. SEO is not an overnight fix. It's not an overnight tool. The general consensus these days is that quality content should be ranking. If you're doing everything correctly, it should be ranking within 3 to 6 months. And we use the window 3 to 6 months. Hey, I start sweating a bit if I don't see something ranking by that 90-day mark, that 3-month mark.
Yeah.
But again, it's not out of this world to take 5 or 6 months. And if it's a really competitive topic, I've even seen things take up to a year to rank. And other outside of, a few things like updating the content, every couple months or so. Once it's in Google's hands, there's not a whole lot you can do. So just another reason why putting your best foot forward and doing everything right the first time around makes that difference. Because it's sort of like you get one shot each time with Google to get something ranked. Otherwise, it's back to square one and
Yeah.
trying from scratch.
It's the same in PR as well. There's patience. It takes
Mhm.
time to build up that trust and to build up that share of voice. And so I appreciate you pointing that out because whether it's marketing or SEO or PR, these things take time. And the key there is consistency and patience.
Yep. SEO, it's a long-term play and it can be supplemented with things like SEM. So which is search engine marketing. And that's going to be like your Google AdWords campaign. But those can get pretty pricey, especially if the competition's high. So, I think SEO will always be the most sustainable approach for online brand recognition. Now that we've discussed these challenges, I wanted to take a look at or put together a list of things that, someone who wants to take a stab at their own SEO or, maybe you just like to keep an eye on your SEO consultant to see how they're performing. So I made a list of what I believe to be the most important metrics in 2023. And this list, it highlights those metrics that you can monitor and track to see if those SEO efforts are paying off. Tracking these is also a really good way of just to determine if it's time to, maybe hire that SEO expert if you're doing it yourself. Especially with some of the things we mentioned, they can help identify potential problem areas that you may have missed in that, say that initial site audit that everybody's doing now, right? The first thing is Google Analytics, monitoring that platform. It's a free platform. It's more information than you could ever imagine, ever want to use. But, a lot of the key metrics you can pull out are really, really valuable. I think it's a tool that provides you with a lot of insight surrounding your site's traffic. And usually the areas that I recommend to clients to look at first, or to at least track, focus on the performance, or at least if they're focused on performance tracking, are overall site of the traffic. That's pretty easy. I mean, it's on the primary page of the platform. The bounce rate, that's one that I don't think people talk about enough. And Google really takes bounce rate into consideration. So bounce rate is the percentage of visitors who leave your website after visiting only one web page. you obviously want that number to be as low as possible. And if you start comparing your desktop bounce rate to your mobile bounce rate, and you see that your mobile bounce rate is much higher, don't freak out initially. They're almost always set up so that your desktop is much lower than the mobile bounce rate. And that's just because on a cell phone, you may have performance issues or slower, or it's just, when I browse on the cell phone, I'm new tab, new tab, new tab, just going. And yeah, versus if it's on a computer, I'm sitting there, I'm going to take the time to read it and disseminate the information. So yeah, we've got the bounce rate, conversions. Yes, conversions. So a lot of clients who aren't in the e-com world are like, "Oh, okay, well, conversions like doesn't really apply to me." And yeah, e-com, because we think conversions to sales,
Right.
visitors to sales, and that's true for e-commerce clients, and a great metric to watch. Obviously, one you're probably already watching, but even for non-e-commerce clients, tracking that metric, but tying it to lead gen forms or just contact forms, that can give you an idea of how engaging your customers are, or even if it's a contact us form that you're tracking, they can let you know, hey, if you see a trend of a lot of people asking the same question, maybe it's time to add that information to the site or make that information easier to find on the site. And then just overall time spent on page, which you can also get out of Google Analytics. That's a good indicator of just how useful and engaging that site is to visitors. You obviously want that to be as high as possible.
So it sounds like Google wants you to do well
Oh
because
yeah,
you do well, they do well.
bingo, exactly, exactly. Even with like Google AdWords, they, you know, unless someone clicks on your website, they're not necessarily making any money. So they want you to perform well. The number of backlinks, that's another metric that is really valuable to watch, at least keep a monthly track on.
Mhm.
It's the number of websites that are linking to your website, and it's a valuable SEO metric because it contributes to that domain authority and the trust out of the EAT framework that we
Yeah.
were talking about. Backlinks can, they can be tracked using a ton of tools. Google Analytics doesn't allow backlink tracking, but the free versions of Ahrefs or SEMrush both allow backlink tracking, or they'll at least tell you how many websites are backlinking. To do a deeper dive, you start getting into the paid versions. But if you're doing it yourself or just starting out, having that number is a good start. Next are two ratios that I really like to keep an eye on because I think they're useful indicators of SEO efforts. The first is impressions to clicks, and the second is paid traffic to organic traffic. So an impression is when your site appears on a search results page but isn't clicked on. And a click is obviously when someone clicks on that page from the search engine. So this ratio is going to give you an idea of how enticing how enticing or useful your site's content appears to users from that results page. And this starts getting into meta descriptions. If you see that you've got a really high impression rate and a really low click-through rate or CTR, then you may say to yourself, let's look at some of these meta descriptions or how we're describing the site, how it's appearing to users and the search engines. In terms of paid traffic to organic traffic, this is really only applying if you're running an SEM campaign like AdWords. But this ratio can help you determine if you're spending or if you need to be spending more on your SEM campaign, or if you've done enough already on the SEO end to establish brand recognition, and maybe it's time you back off the SEM budget and reallocate that somewhere else.
Ah, makes sense.
Then the number of pages, ranking, and site referrals. Again, Ahrefs and SEMrush are really good tools for providing this information. The free versions can do this on both of those. And these are two metrics that I use to just identify weak or low performing segments of the website. So if you look at it and you see that all of your web pages, all of your blog content have a really, or just a decent rank, a rank that you're happy with, and they have a lot of other sites referring to them. So backlinks, but then maybe you have a certain topic or a certain niche that is just really, the numbers are much lower, an outlier to the other numbers. That could be a sign that you need to, maybe look at the technical side. Is there something broken in the page? Are your tags and everything in place? Is it formatted properly? Is it your sitemap? Endless possibilities there. But also just the content, what's the competitor content on that exact topic look like compared to yours? How are they ranking? What, do they have much higher backlinks from the same type of content? Again, it's the kind of thing where you can sort of sandbox it and say, okay, well, this could mean this could mean that, and come up with your own theories. And it's a lot of trial and error.
Yeah.
You try something, hey, that doesn't work. Try something else for a month or two. If that doesn't work, move forward, try something new. But again, this is one of those situations where if you have time, cool. If you don't, you really need to narrow things down. That might be the situation where you say to yourself, it's time to get an SEO expert in and, expedite this and get things rolling a bit.
When you talk about page ranking, just to briefly ask, you said decent page ranking. What, in your opinion, is decent? I know that's going to be a little bit
First,
different for every
first
client.
page,
First page? Okay.
first page. Again, I'll say this: first page or consistently trending towards the first page.
Gotcha.
Which again goes back to those metrics of if you don't know how your page was ranking 6 months ago because you weren't tracking it,
Yeah.
it's you gotta start today. But yeah, I mean, you always want to shoot for first page, even if it's the bottom of the first page, that or you're trending upwards. It shows you're moving in the right direction.
Number
And if
40,
you're
the top 40 is still in the top 40.
there, you go,
So
there you go.
counts.
And then lastly, just brand mentions. I use Google Alerts, Megan. I think you do too. I've heard you mention Google Alerts several times. It just allows you to kind of keep an eye on how clients or your brand is really being referenced by other websites and media outlets. And it's not technically an SEO tracking metric, but it's still just a really simple and valuable tool that I think is worth mentioning. And now we are at the questions.
All right. We do have a few really good ones. So one was about long form content.
Mhm.
You mentioned that 2,500 words is kind of the trend these days. And so one of the questions was, how do you leverage that long form content? Like, should you put it in a blog post? Should it be a case study? I mean, are people really going and reading a 2,500 word blog post?
Not necessarily. And I think too, that's why a lot of people are like, I don't want to write this blog post when I know that nobody's going to read it. And I remind them that you're writing that blog post for maybe a few people that will read it, but primarily for Google. You're letting Google know, hey, we are the authority on this. If someone in this industry is looking for a piece of information, they're coming to this site because we host all of the answers. As far as how to leverage it, with it being a case study or a blog post, Google doesn't necessarily differentiate between case studies, blog posts, white paper.
Okay.
As long as it's formatted and hosted on the site, and it falls within that site map and can be properly crawled, and it starts getting into the technical SEO side. But as long as you check all those boxes and it's on that website and live, good to go, then Google doesn't really care, if you have it listed as a case study or white paper or blog, or even just, you don't have to call it a blog. You can just call it, hey, content for Google, I think would probably still
Yeah.
be appropriate to rank.
And, I also think it's important. It's like you said, people go, well, I don't want to write 2,500 words, but you just have to figure out, is the investment worth it? For example, if your product say, or your service say is like a $25,000 a year contract, and you write one piece of content and it brings in one customer and it's sitting there evergreen, is it worth the $25,000 ROI at the end of the day? I mean, I think for many
Right.
people, they'd be like, well, yeah, I'd write 2,500 words to get, this one contract. So you just kind of have to think of it that way. It's evergreen. It's on there. You're writing something, yes, for Google, but think about the person who's going to be most likely to click on it and click through and become a customer. And that might help you create better quality content too and make it worthwhile.
Yeah. And I think another issue that people run into is, those first few blog articles are really difficult because you're not generating that traffic. 6 months in, 8 months in, after you've been consistently posting, you can see that exponential climb of traffic. Hopefully, if you're doing everything correctly, you can see that climb. And, even myself, I find that to be more motivating. I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm going to jump in, I'll see how many, it becomes a competition. It's okay. How many hits can I add to the website with this or that? So, it's like doing cardio or something, those first 10 minutes, they suck. But once you get, you find your rhythm, you find your pace, and you start to see the results, that's where the motivation comes in, and the inspiration.
Perfect. Well, we're getting close to the end of our time here, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. Um, you already talked about this. Someone asked, how long does it take to rank on Google search? So real quick, I think you said give it 3 to 6 months to make sure.
Yeah, shoot for 3 to 6 months. If it's a really competitive space, it could go up to a year. But usually, if you're trying to write content for something that you think is going to take a year, I think you should go back to the drawing board and identify some new target keywords that are similar or within the same family.
Awesome. I always learn something from you when we do these sessions. So thank you again for all the fantastic and insightful information. This has been awesome and I learned a lot. I'm sure that our listeners learned a lot too. We are going to go ahead and wrap it up so we can jump on to the next session in just a few minutes, but thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.